Hi, this is Attorney Mike Rev. I'm coming to you from Chicago as usual, and I was doing a long live stream today on the Kim Blandino trial. It's a good video. It's called Closing Arguments. I'll put a link to that in the description below, but there were some real fireworks during the rebuttal argument. Mr. Blandino, who's the defendant in the case, got upset by the prosecutor's argument, and it really is very interesting. So I just clipped that portion out of there, and you can kind of see as it progresses what happens. Let's do it.
Thank you. Oh, this isn't to make the world a better place. This is so Kim Blandino can have fun. This is what he does for fun. You heard him himself. If you aren't having fun, you aren't doing it right. That's exactly what this is about. He told you he was having fun up here today, up here yesterday. He was having fun doing all of this because, as he told you, this is what he does. He goes, he targets judges for investigation, and then that's what's fun to him. He set up his office in his house where this is what he does, his illegal work, as he called it. This is not a matter of some man is foolishly set off on some random journey against one judge. By his own words, what you've heard is what his course of conduct is and has been for years. He told you that, yeah, he sent these letters to other judges. And despite what defense counsel says, it's not true that he's never gotten a response. He told you himself that he got a response by marshals coming to his house. He knows what he was doing is wrong. He's not just Don Quixote. He's not even close to Don Quixote. He is a man who is obsessed with this cause. He is obsessed with this because this is his only form of enjoyment. This is what he enjoys most in life, is seeking these sort of interactions to see what kind of play he can get. If he can get somebody. Here, he thought he did. This, Mr. Blandino, if you aren't having fun, you aren't doing it right, that goes to his motive. You're instructed on motive. It's instruction 4. We're not required to prove motive, but it's something that you can consider. Motive is what prompts somebody to act. So, well, Mr. Blandino told you he doesn't really want much for money or anything like that. He doesn't really care about that, right? What he cares about is just going along this path and enjoying himself, what he does. That is what he's accomplished here. That's what he's doing in every single letter. You can see it in his letters as he writes and he puts in these jokes that fall flat. This is him having fun, and that's why we're here. Because Mr. Blandino has decided that this is how he's decided he wants to have fun, is by going after judges, sending them inappropriate correspondence, having inappropriate contacts with them in an attempt to see if he can influence their actions, the actions of public officers. Jury instruction number 12. That's the definition of extortion. A person who, with the intent to extort or gain any money or other property. You're instructed as to what extort means. Extort is defined in jury instruction number 12. Extort means influencing another person's actions through withholding a disclosure of information. That's exactly what he was doing. He was influencing or seeking to influence, he had the intent to influence Mr. Federico's actions in his capacity as a pro tem judge. And he also, because this is an or, right, sought to gain money. Well, the money was not a large amount, right? $25 in his own pocket. Two different ways here that Mr. Blandino has met that first subsection of the first element of extortion, both by withholding information, right, and influencing action, as well as to gain, what, $25. It could be 50 cents. It can be $2 million. It doesn't matter. It's going in his pocket, and that's what it is. It's going to him. And I'll just note, because defense counsel argued a lot that, well, this is going to repay somebody, and the money's going here and there. It does not matter. That is not an element of the crime. It doesn't matter where the money was going. He said, you need to pay me $25. It doesn't matter what he was going to do with it afterwards. And then, across the whole thing, the next way that you get his intent is Mr. Blandino's intent to influence the actions of a public officer. I'll note for you that throughout every piece of correspondence that Mr. Blandino provided to Mr. Federico, it was addressing Mr. Federico in his capacity as a judge pro tem, in his official capacity. It begins right here. Exhibit 3, the note that he wrote on April 8th, to Michael Federico, pro tem judge, alternate judge, City of Las Vegas. April 25th, 2019, Michael Federico, in his capacity as a judge pro tempore. When he finally tells him exactly what he wants, Michael Federico, alternate judge for Department 20, Courtroom 1C, Las Vegas Municipal Court, at the Regional Justice Center. The May 9th letter that he dated because he'd been working on it for several days, May 8th, Michael Federico, in his capacity as a judge pro tempore. All of it, ladies and gentlemen, was directed at Mr. Federico in his capacity as a judge pro tempore, because everything that he sought to do was influence Mr. Federico's actions as a judge pro tempore, as a public officer. None of it is appropriate. It's illegal. That's the bottom line. Even if you buy what defense is saying, that you just want to sit down, though we'll go into that, and his own words belie that. If he says, Mr. Federico, I'm going to file complaints against you unless you sit down and talk to me, that's extortion, right? That is extortion. Defense went on and on about Detective Mead said, yeah, you can ask to meet with anybody. Yeah, sure. You can say, hey, look, I want to talk to you. I want to meet. But you cannot threaten somebody to do anything. This is not, as defense counsel said, a form of theft, as much as it is a form of coercion. This is a way that what the law has done here is made it illegal for people to say, I want you to do something, or else I'm going to do this other thing that you really don't want me to do. Because here, in this case, those things, imputing disgrace upon Michael Federico by filing a complaint with the Nevada Commission on Judicial Discipline, by sending all these things, these horrible allegations to his bosses, all of that, by filing criminal charges with the FBI, all of those impute disgrace. And that brings us to exactly what the threat was. Here he threatened, Mr. Blandino threatened to accuse Mr. Federico of a crime, namely a federal civil rights crime, and accusing him of that to the FBI, as well as to expose him to disgrace. Disgrace in being what he believed is an unethical judge who's violated the code and violated his rights, knowing, as his own words stated within the letter from May 9th, knowing exactly what this means. Look at that. Mr. Blandino says when in the very few times that he actually speaks in the first person, I would want to know that a person who worked with the firm that had a prominent webpage was not bringing any disrepute in any way to the firm or its name. Mr. Blandino knows that that's what he's threatening, knows that's his whole intent here. To expose or impute disgrace upon Mr. Federico. You're instructed. Jury instruction number 21. Disgrace means to humiliate or cause loss of favor or standing. You heard from Mr. Federico what the effects of these actions could be and would be, and it was humiliating and could cause loss of standing and favor. In fact, when Mr. Blandino starts ramping up his behavior, right, when he doesn't get the response that he wants, and I'm not talking about the first response or the second response, I'm talking about the response on May 15th, 2019. After that letter that he sent on May 9th, 2019, when he doesn't get a response back from Mr. Federico and he ramps it up to the next level, he makes good on his threat. He makes good on his threat to expose Mr. Federico to disgrace by actually sending everything that he's already sent to the managing board of directors of his firm, all of his bosses. And what did Mr. Federico tell you about that? It was humiliating. It was humiliating. That's it. Mr. Blandino has committed extortion so many different ways in this case. Not just one. There's not just one avenue of extortion here. And it begins with Mr. Blandino. It begins right there in the note that he wrote on April 8th, 2019. I am ready to begin filing my complaints against you, indicating that it's for his courtroom activities, including violations of the code. He indicates that he's required by his religious beliefs and practices to give him an opportunity to negotiate a settlement. Please let me know within the next 10 days, indicating how serious he is, because he's been effective. He's been effective because his last two letters have resulted in letters of caution. So please don't take this matter lightly. This note doesn't say, hey, I just want to sit down and I want an apology, Mr. Federico. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say, hey, I'm going to file a complaint against you regardless, but I'd love an apology. It doesn't say that. What it says is I'm going to file a complaint or we can negotiate. Extortion begins there. Then, when he doesn't hear anything from Mr. Federico, he goes to the Regional Justice Center. He told you that he was all around that day. He was all around. Yet somehow, he walks into the courtroom still carrying his tray of stuff with his shoes untied from walking through security. And he told you that before he ever got into that courtroom, he looked right into it and he could see Mr. Federico right there on the bench. Okay. Now, he goes in, he sits down, he gets kicked out. Mr. Federico, in no unclear terms, in his capacity as a judge in that moment, says, you need to leave because you came to my private law office. Don't stop me. Defense and the defendant himself told you, if only he had said, just don't come back. I don't want to talk to you. That's it. Nothing like that. Then that would have been it. There are no clear terms. Get out of the courtroom. Don't stop people. But what does Mr. Blandino do? Well, now he's getting the reaction he wants. Now, Mr. Blandino is having fun. aren't having fun, you aren't doing it right. So now Mr. Blandino knows he's on the right path. The path that he has set forth upon to see what he can get out of Mr. Federico. So he goes, he files a customer feedback complaint for whatever that's worth, and takes that and attaches it to a letter that he went home immediately and typed. April 25th, 2019, this letter. This is the letter that, once again, to Michael Federico in his official capacity as a judge pro tempore, as we discussed. The subject line itself indicates what's occurring here. The subject line itself indicates, it might as well say subject, extortion. Desire not to have to file formal complaint with Nevada Commission on Judicial Discipline. That's not how this works. If a judge is does something unethical, they should just be reported. They should be reported. Anybody that's doing something unethical should just be reported. You, or Mr. Blandino, I should say, as a private citizen, anybody in this country doesn't have a right to dangle something over someone's head to say, you were unethical, now I own you? You committed a crime? Now you have to do what I say? That is extortion. That is the purpose of this crime. And in this particular letter, Mr. Blandino discusses thoroughly what he'd initially started talking about. In addition to identifying himself as a volunteer investigator for the Nevada Commission on Judicial Discipline, not helping the Nevada Commission on Judicial Discipline, he is for the Nevada Commission on Judicial Discipline, indicating, I came to your offices to see if we could resolve the complaint without having to use scarce judicial and Nevada Commission on Judicial Discipline resources. He indicates that he's done so with other misbehaving judges. And then he goes on, so to avoid having the Nevada Commission on Judicial Discipline subject complaint to their protocols, I once again reach out to you to resolve this matter between you and I, or your attorney and I, if you wish to have an intermediary. You remember that whole argument the defense counsel had about all Mr. Blandino wanting to do was to sit down with Mr. Federico? April 25th, 2019, he's telling Mr. Federico he doesn't even have to deal with him directly. He can have an intermediary. This whole sit-down thing, it's not even a real thing. Because you take a look at Mr. Blandino's words, he didn't care. He wants to see what he can get out of Mr. Federico, whether it's Mr. Federico dealing with him directly or Mr. Federico's intermediary. And then, please know that I am very serious about following through to the best of strength that God gives me to do so. He indicates the sacrifice that I spend in time, inconvenience, and discomfort is very small compared to what they suffered to establish freedom and liberty based upon the very principles that God and His Son Jesus would wish for all on this planet to enjoy. The sacrifice that I spend in time, inconvenience, and discomfort, definitely putting himself out to be a martyr. But if you aren't doing it, if you aren't having fun, you aren't doing it right. Doing it because he's having fun. And then it goes further. In that April 25th, 2019 letter, it wasn't just about this.
Sorry, I gotta stop. It's not supposed to be like this. Stop. He's trying to tell me. Stop. No, I would ask, can you invite Mr.
Mr. Dickerson could not approach the defense table. I'm sorry.
Okay.
If he can stay.
He's trying to talk to me, Judge.
Stop talking.
Purposely. He knows he's trying to talk to me.
Stop.
This is improper, and I'm making a bar complaint against you. I'm making a bar complaint against you, Mr. Dickerson. I will get these jobs, and I will make a bar complaint against you.
Mr. Blandino, stop.
If I would have done this, you would have told me immediately not to do that.
Completely and totally inappropriate.
It's inappropriate for him to come here multiple times, and you know that, Judge.
Wow.
He's in the well. He is permitted to walk around the well.
You would not let me do that if I were representing myself.
Stop.
If I were going over to the prosecution.
I'm sorry. Look, I was just asking,
Okay,
you give
we're
me a
going
look.
to
If he
take a
doesn't,
recess. During this recess, you're
I can
allowed
see.
not to discuss or communicate with anyone, including your fellow jurors, in any way regarding the case or its merits, either by voice, phone, email, text, internet, or other means of communication, or social media, read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case, doing research, such as consulting dictionaries, using the internet, or using reference materials, make any investigation of your case, recreate an aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own at home, or express the opinion regarding the case till it's finally submitted to you, will be.
Well, we finally get some fireworks. That is pretty crazy. Am I on here? Wait, let's start with do I have do I have my mic on? First of all, thank you everybody for the super chats. You were cracking me up the entire time in the chat. I was trying to stay out of it because it was happening. It was interesting. It was long and boring in some parts, but it was very interesting. I didn't want to step on anybody's argument. I definitely have thoughts on this, and I was shocked but we get the fireworks there. Of course, Blandino's completely wrong. Yes, the prosecutor's going after him. He's not nominating for homecoming queen. He's trying to put him in jail. That's his job as the prosecuting attorney, and he's not being nice to him. But he's also not crossing any lines. He's making legal arguments to a jury. He has the entire well. He can go right up to Blandino if he wants to. He can go anywhere in there. I mean, he can't touch him or something. He can't assault we can't commit an assault and battery in the well of the courtroom. But short of that, he basically has free reign. Blandino's completely out of his mind. It was wild to see Ben. Ben had nothing to say. But I mean, he's got a client who never listens to him. I mean, it's such a wild position to be in. Okay, that threw me off. I'll do this. You guys tell me if it gets going. I have it in the side here. Should I go back to it? Wait, should I go back to the...
Out of the courtroom,
I
so that the prosecutor can conclude with his closing.
I apologize.
Can you control yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
If I just made, he's saying that I wouldn't make the objection. The third time he came over, he said, I don't know what he did. He was turning or whatever to Mr. Dickerson, asked me to say, you asked him not to come over here. I was going to object or ask Your Honor to have him not approach the defense table because he can't seem to control himself and he was turning. So I was not, and then he just started looking. So I was intending to ask Your Honor if he could not approach the defense table when this was, whatever this was happening.
I've never seen anything like this. This is just
Neither have I.
totally inappropriate. He's in the well. I mean, you can't control
Why wasn't I
yourself
Absolutely.
because the district attorney is walking around giving his closing argument.
Why is he getting that close to the table,
Like I
Judge?
said, if you cannot control yourself, you will be taken out of the courtroom so Mr. Dickerson can conclude.
Yep.
Do you understand what's going to happen? You can't scream at people in the courtroom.
That's my normal voice.
It's screaming.
I can't whisper my,
Okay, that's a normal voice right there.
yeah, I'm kind of.
Okay, when you start screaming at people
Oh
in the middle
my.
of their closing argument, it's totally inappropriate. You realize the jury just saw what you did?
I know they saw that.
That's not good for you. I'm just here to tell
I
you.
know that.
That is not good for you.
That's why he was taunting me.
So-
He wanted a reaction. He wanted a
So
reaction.
Mr.
and he got it.
Dickerson owns you? Okay.
No.
Yep.
he
So
wanted to
his
do it.
behavior dictates how you behave.
That was taunting.
Okay?
That was
It was
taunting.
not taunting you. That is ridiculous.
Speak it,
Can
Judge.
you control yourself so I can bring
Yes,
the
I
jury
can.
back in?
I can.
Okay, have a seat.
Wow.
Thank you.
You can bring the jury back in.
Wow. I've never seen anything like
I think
that.
Mr. Bacon,
For reference, I've tried cases, been at many trials. Nothing the prosecutor was doing was out of line
I'm
remotely.
not kidding. I will have you removed.
I know you're not kidding, Judge.
Okay.
Here at Law Talk, we like to have fun with silly stuff that happens in court, and every once in a while, and completely by accident, I assure you, you might learn something. Thanks for watching.